Hello students, I am Lalita S. Humraskar, Economics teacher, BYK College of Commerce. Welcome you in online lecture series organized by GE Society's BYK College of Commerce, Nasik for class 12th and for academic year 2021-22. Today I am going to discuss with you chapter number 4, that is supply analysis. Today I am going to discuss with you law of supply. So under law of supply I am going to cover number 1 is introduction point, number 2 statement of the law of supply, number 3 what are assumptions under law of supply, number 4 explanation of law of supply with the help of schedule, number 5 explanation of law of supply with the help of diagram, and number 6 what are exceptions under the law of supply. Let us see the introduction point. Number 1 is here, law of supply is a fundamental principle of economic theory. So law of supply is a basic principle of any economic theory. So it is same as a law of demand. Law of demand is also fundamental or basic principle of any economic theory. Number 2 is it was introduced by Professor Alfred Marshall in his book Principles of Economics, which was published in 1890. So who is a real architect of microeconomics? Naturally Professor Alfred Marshall. He developed many microeconomic concepts in his book Principles of Economics, which was published in 1890. So law of supply was introduced by Professor Alfred Marshall. Number 3 is law of supply explains functional relationship between price and quantity supplied. So law of supply explains functional relationship between two variables. And what are these two variables? Price and quantity supplied. So when price rises, supply rises. When price falls, supply falls. Okay, so there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. So law of supply explains functional relationship, that is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Next one is statement of the law of supply. What is the statement of the law of supply? Other things being constant, higher the price of commodity, more is the quantity supplied, and lower the price of commodity, less is the quantity supplied. Okay, so by keeping other things constant, when price rises, supply rises, and when price falls, supply also falls. Okay, so there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied by keeping other things constant. It means law is, other things being constant means law is based on certain conditions or assumptions. Okay. Let us see the functional relationship between price and quantity supplied symbolically. Okay, Sx is equal to function of Px. Okay, so capital S stands here supply, small x stands here commodity, F stands here function, and capital P stands here price of commodity. So supply of commodity X is equal to function of price of commodity X. So there is a functional relationship between price and quantity supplied, and this is shown by symbolically. Now let us see the assumptions under the law of supply. Okay, other things, what is the statement of the law of supply? Other things remaining constant. When price falls, supply falls. When price rises, supply also rises. What do you understand by other things remaining constant? Other things remaining constant means law of supply is based on certain conditions or assumptions. Okay, if these assumption changes, law will be invalid. So in it is said that microeconomic theories or laws, they are based on certain conditions or assumptions. Okay, now let us see these assumptions on which law of supply is based. Number 1 is constant cost of production. Okay, so it is assumed that there is no change in the cost of production. A change in cost of production affects the profit of the seller. If cost of production is high, profit is low, and if cost of production is low, then profit will be high. So it is assumed that cost of production remains constant. Second assumption is constant technique of production. It is assumed that technique of production remains constant. So technique of production remains constant. Improve and advanced technique of production leads to an increase in production and it causes increase in the supply. Okay, third assumption is no change in weather condition. Okay, so it is assumed that there is no change in weather conditions, or you can say natural conditions. So natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, etc. may decrease the supply of goods and services. So it is assumption that there is no change in weather condition. Number 4 is there is no change in government policy, right? So it is assumed that government policies like taxation policy, trade policy, etc. remains unchanged. If government increases tax, supply of goods and services becomes less. Okay, so there is no change in government policy. This is an assumption. Number 5 is there is no change in transport costs. It is assumed that there is no change in the condition of transport facilities and cost. Okay, for example, better transport facility increases the supply of goods and services. Next assumption under the law of supply is prices of other goods remains constant. Prices of other goods are assumed to remain constant. If they change, the law of supply may not hold true because producer may transfer resources to other products. For example, if the price of wheat rises and price of rice remains constant, then producer will think of producing more of wheat. This will affect the supply of rice. Okay, so prices of other goods remains constant. That is an assumption under law of supply. Number 7 is there is no change in future expectation. No future expectations. Okay, the law also assumes that the seller do not expect future changes in the price of product. So these are the assumptions or condition on which law of supply is based. Now let us see the explanation of the law of supply with the help of supply schedule. Here schedule is given, two columns are given. In first column price of commodity X in rupees given. In second column supply of commodity X in kilograms given. Here prices are given rupees 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and supply of commodity X in kilograms given 100 kg, 200, 300, 400 and 500 kg. Okay, when at price rupees 10, supply of commodity is 100 kilogram. When price rises to 20, supply also rises to 200 kilogram. Again when price rises to rupees 30, supply of commodity also rises to 300 kilogram. Again when price rises to 40, supply of commodity also rises to 400 kilogram. Again price rises to rupees 50, supply of commodity also rises to 500 kilogram. So what it shows, there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. There is a functional relationship between price and quantity supplied. And what is functional relationship here? That is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Let us see the explanation of the law of supply with the help of diagram. On y-axis we measure price and on x-axis we measure quantity supplied in kilograms. At price rupees 10, quantity supplied is 100. At price rupees 20, supply is 200. When price rises to 30, supply rises to 300 kilogram. At price rupees 40, supply rises to 400 kilogram. When price rises to 50, supply also rises to 500 kilograms. Okay, when we plot these points on the graph and after that when we join this point we get upward sloping supply curve, that is a SS. Supply curve is indicating with the help of SS alphabets here. Okay, so what is the slope of the supply curve? Slope of the supply, it means supply curve slopes upward from left to right. Now let us see the exceptions of the law of supply. Right here, first exception is supply of labor. Okay, supply of labor. So what is a labor supply? Labor supply is the total number of hours that workers to work at a given wage rate. That is a labor supply. An interesting exception to the law of supply is provided by the supply curve of labor. Okay, so in the beginning, supply curve of labor slopes upward as usual from left to right. because at higher wage the units of labor are tempted to offer more hours of work. So this continues till the time wage rate have risen sufficiently, right? So when wage rate goes beyond a particular level, the worker prefers to substitute work by leisure and cut short the supply of labor. Hence, beyond a certain wage rate, the supply curve of labor slopes backwards. So this is called backward bending supply curve of labor, and that is an exception to the law of supply. Let us see why supply curve of labor is a backward bending with the help of labor supply schedule. Here labor supply schedule is given, 3 columns are given. In first column, wage rate per hour in rupees given, in second column hours of work per day given, and in third column total amount of wages in rupees given. Okay, so at rupees 100, worker offers 5 hours per day, so 100 into 5, so total amount of wages of the worker is 500 rupees. When wage rate rises per hour, that is 200 rupees, then worker offers to work for 7 hours. Okay, so 200 into 7, for what is the total wages? For rupees 1400. When again wage rate rises, okay, to rupees 300, workers offers hours for working, that is 6 hours per day. So here he reduced to work, okay, and his total amount of wages is 300 into 6, rupees 1800. Okay, when wage rate goes beyond a particular level, the worker prefers to substitute work by leisure and cut short the supply of labor here. Okay, so beyond a certain wage rate, supply curve of labor slopes backwards. So this is called a backward bending supply curve of labor, and that is an exception to the law of supply. Let us see with the help of diagram. On y-axis we measure wage rate in rupees per hour, and on x-axis we measure supply of labor hours of work. Okay, let us see at on y-axis we measure wage rate, that is in rupees per hour. So at rupees 100, workers offers to work for 5 hours. Okay, when wage rate rises to 200, right here, so worker offers only 7 hours to for working here. Okay, so when wage rate rises to rupees 300, okay, here, so what happened here? When wage rate rises to rupees 300, that is beyond a particular limit, workers reduce his working hours to 6 hours, from 7 to 6 hours. Okay, here, so SAS1 is a backward bending labor supply curve. Okay, SA is an increasing supply curve. Okay, and AS is what here? AS is a leisure time. Okay, so when wage rate goes beyond a particular level, okay, so the worker prefers to substitute work by leisure and cut short the supply of labor. So hence beyond a certain wage rate, the supply curve of labor slopes backwards. This is called a backward bending supply curve of labor. Okay, so SAS1 is a backward bending labor supply curve. SA is an increasing supply curve, and AS is a leisure time. So supply of labor, that is an exception to the law of supply here. Now second exception to the law of supply is agricultural goods. The law of supply does not apply to agricultural goods because they are produced in a specific season and their production depends on weather condition. So due to unfavorable weather conditions, agricultural production becomes low. Their supply cannot be increased even at a higher price. So agricultural goods, that is an exception to the law of supply. Third exception to the law of supply is urgent need for cash. If a seller is suffering from losses and he wants to close his business and he needs urgent need for cash, okay, so he may sell his product even at a below market price, right here. So urgent need for cash, that is an exception to the law of supply. Number 4 is perishable goods. The sellers have to dispose of the perishable goods like meat, fish, fruits, vegetable, flowers, etc. even if the price falls. What do you understand by perishable goods? Perishable goods are those goods you cannot store for longer time. Okay. So what happened? The sellers have to dispose of of all these perishable goods like fish, fruits, vegetable, flowers, etc. even if the price falls. So they cannot wait for a longer time for the price to rise in order to increase the supply. So perishable goods, that is an exception to the law of supply. Number 5 is rare goods. Number 5 is rare goods. The supply of rare goods cannot increase or decrease according to its demand. Even if the price rises, supply remains unchanged here. For example, rare paintings, old coins, antique goods, these are the examples of rare goods. So rare goods, that is also exception to the law of supply. So these are the exceptions of the law of supply. Now let us see the evaluation part of this topic. Let us see the first question. Answer the following questions. Okay, this is a 4 marks question. What is the question given here? Explain the law of supply. Now how to write down the answer? Number 1 is you have to write the introduction about the law of supply, what I explained at the beginning. Number 2, you have to write the statement of the law. Number 3, you have to explain law of supply with the help of schedule. Number 4, you have to explain law of supply with the help of diagram. And finally, you have to write only the names of assumptions on which law of supply is based. This much you have to write, then only you will get here 4 out of 4. Next question is, do you agree or disagree? Give reasons. Okay, this is a 4 marks question. Okay, what is the statement given here? Law of supply depends on many assumptions. Or what is the answer here? Yes, I do agree with the above statement. Immediately you will get here 1 mark and 3 marks for writing reasons. Okay, what you have to write in reasons here? First one, introduction of the law. Number 2, statement of the law. And number 3, explanation of all assumptions in detail. Then only you will get here 4 out of 4. Second statement is given here, labor supply curve is a backward bending. Okay, so what is the answer here? Yes, I do agree with the above statement. Immediately you will get here 1 mark. And what you have to write in reasons for 3 marks. Labor supply curve is an exception to the law of supply, and after that you have to explain why supply curve slopes backward side with the help of schedule and diagram. Then only you will get here 4 out of 4. Now next question is a essay type question, that is a answer in detail. This is a 8 marks question. What is the question here given? State and explain law of supply with its assumptions. Right here, how to write down the answer? Number 1 is an introduction point. Number 2, statement of the law of supply. Number 3, explanation of the law of supply with the help of schedule. Number 4, explanation of the law of supply with the help of diagram. Number 5, explanation of assumptions in detail. And number 6, write only names of exceptions here. Second essay type question given here, state and explain law of supply with its exceptions. Let us see how to write down the answer. Number 1 is an introduction point. Number 2 is a statement of the law. Number 3, explanation of the law of supply with the help of schedule. Number 4, explanation of law of supply with the help of diagram. Number 5, explanation of exceptions in detail, that you have to explain in detail. And number 6, write only names of assumptions. This much you have to write, then only you will get 8 out of 8. So this is an essay type question. So student, what I discussed with you today, I discussed with you what is a law of supply, introduction point, that I explain with you. Number 2, statement of the law, schedule and its explanation. Number 4, diagram and its explanation. Okay, after that, what are the assumptions under the law of supply, that I explain with you. And finally, I explain what are exceptions under the law of supply. This much I explain with you today. Finally, student, thank you for listening my video lecture.